How you doing, guys? Logan here with EV Sportline. Today I'm going to show you how to install your Rivian R1S running boards with the RMaxx Aero panels. We can hop into tools and what comes in the kit next. All right, so looking at what tools are required for this install, I've laid it out in front of me and we'll walk through it. Starting over here, I have my ratchet, breaker bar, and my torque wrench. I'm choosing to use a 1/2-inch drive. Now you can use 3/8 drive. This is just what I use to make it easy. And then we have our supplied T20 bit and supplied TP55 bit. We're gonna use a 1/4-inch socket for our T20. We'll need a 10mm, a 7/16 or 11mm socket, and this is gonna be for our TP55, a 9/16 and a 17mm socket. I'm also gonna bring a 9/16 wrench for our running board install. If you have a Gen 2, you're gonna need a T27, and then we'll use a 4 and a 5mm Allen key. These over here are optional, but recommended. We recommend you use Loctite on any OEM Rivian bolt that you pull out. Recommend adding a little bit of this before running it all the way up. You have a jack puck, a tape measure, and then optional as well, we have this whole installation guide online if that's more your speed. All right, let's get into the parts. In front of me, I have all of the panels and brackets needed for our passenger side. Looking here, we have our panel A. This is gonna be the leading panel, panel B, and panel C. You might notice that we have a big hole cut out of the back of panel C. We provide this jack puck plate, essentially a trap door that allows you to use your factory lifting locations. The R1S is gonna come with 3 brackets for each side, 1 front bracket, and 2 middle brackets. We're gonna need to prep these brackets by putting our clip nuts on them. So I kind of laid out some of our hardware that we're gonna have, some M8 button head bolts and some of these clip nuts. What we're gonna do for preparation is we're going to put these clip nuts on the hexagonal tabs and the rectangular tabs of TS panel A, TS panel B, and on the top hole for S panel C. And here's just a close-up of our jack puck plate, a removable trap door. You're gonna wanna put the clip nut. You'll see where this piece kind of makes a U shape. And then this large tab, we're gonna wanna put the clip nut facing in. So the threads are gonna be pointed in towards the concave side. Pop it in place like that. So you do the same on the panels. And then also, looking over here, we have our front bracket and then a middle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna install our clip nuts over here on these 2 holes, and we're gonna point the threads towards the holes with the markings. So you see here on the second one, same thing, our clip nut with its threads pointing up towards the plane with the holes of the markings. Front bracket is no exception, same thing. We have our clip nuts put on towards the holes with the markings. And we can hop under the vehicle. All right, so I just hopped underneath our Rivian R1S. You might notice that there's no factory trim. We removed the factory under tray covers as we had running boards previously installed on this vehicle. Something that I did note is that I left these T20 fasteners in. I'm gonna remove these now. And also we're gonna remove this outermost T20 fastener. We're gonna hang on to these for later as we're gonna use them in the install. Now for preparing the underside for our running board brackets. There's a lot of hardware underneath here, and we're gonna be using some of these TP55 bolts and some of these 17mm bolts for our running board brackets and our Aero panels brackets, respectively. So for the naming nomenclature, I just wanna run through the 1st generation and 2nd generation bolts we're gonna be using, starting from the front over here. So we have our TP55 number 1 and 2. These are on the step down. And then we have the step down right here, number 3. So we're gonna mount to number 3. We have number 4 right here. Number 5, we're gonna mount to number 5, 6, and 7. We're gonna use bolt location number 7, right behind the factory lift location. Now, you may or may not have a metal locating plate, looks like a triangle, that grabs 2 of these 17mm bolts and this TP55. If you do, we're gonna remove that. right now in this step. For our second gen, it's kind of similar, at least at the front. We have bolt number 1 and 2. We have the step down and then bolt 3. This is where it gets interesting. At bolt 4, on some of the second generations of the early batch didn't have this, but the later batch has this. They have 2 extra mounting positions around bolt 4. So essentially we'd have 3, bolt number 4, 5, and 6. Bolt number 7, we're gonna use bolt number 7, bolt number 8, and then bolt number 9. We're also gonna use this one right both behind the factory lift location. So now that we've identified our bracket locations, we're gonna grab our brackets. For the R1S, each side is gonna get 3 brackets. The front 2 are gonna be the same, so that's gonna be for the front position and the middle position. The rear location is gonna be side specific. So you're gonna notice there's a sticker on these brackets. That's -003 is gonna be for your passenger side. -002 is gonna be for your driver's side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take down bolt number 3. Now, you're gonna need a breaker bar. I've already broken these loose, so I'm just gonna run them out with my ratchet. Take my Loctite out a little bit before reinstalling the hardware. Now these can be kept loose. We're gonna torque these to spec once we have the board actually mounted on these brackets. All right, moving to the middle. For the Loctite, take our bracket. Then we'll move to our rearmost bolt. This is gonna be directly behind our lift location. And we'll move to this rear bolt. And again, I've already broken these loose with our breaker bar. Pull them out, gotta dab a thread lock, and install the bracket. Okay, and now we can move to installing our center brackets for our Aero panels. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna install our Aero panel brackets. So these are the brackets that are physically gonna be holding the Aero panels on to our 17mm bolts. So on the Gen 1 R1S, we're gonna be using these front 2 tray bolts. So easy enough, remove these and slide this on, like so. We're gonna want the clip nut to be on the leading edge. If you have a Gen 2, we're gonna flash a photo of what it's gonna look like above. Essentially, you're gonna use the leading bolt on your tray, and then also a threaded hole that goes into the frame of the Rivian. And we supply a washer, spacer, and bolt for that application. So yeah, again, for the Gen 1s, you're gonna use these 2 mounting positions. The Gen 2, you're gonna end up using this rear mounting position and the frontmost mounting position. You may need a breaker bar for these. I've previously loosened these up, so they're gonna come out with not much force. And just like with the TP55 bolts, we're gonna add a little bit of Loctite. We're gonna keep this a little loose, and we're gonna confirm the distance from the center of this lift position hole to the center of this clip nut. Should be approximately 11.5 inches. Once you confirm that, you can torque this down to spec, 45 foot-pounds. Hopping down bracket number 2. So this is our second running board bracket. We're gonna be using these 2 bolts right here. We'll show a picture of what it would look like on a Gen 2 as these bolts are in a different location, but we're gonna remove these. All right, put Loctite on. Now there's a couple different configurations that you can see on these brackets. but we're gonna follow the Aero, and we'll note that there's a little triangle indent on 2 of the holes, or at least one part of the slot and 1 hole. That's gonna be our Gen 1 position for both the middle and the rear. For the Gen 2, we're gonna try to find the location where there's 2 indents, 2 semicircles, both in the front slot and the rear slot, and that's gonna be our mounting locations. We're gonna try to line up to those 2 points. Since we're Gen 1, we'll just find the little triangle. And just like with the front, before torquing these down, we're gonna make sure that the distance between the front clip nut middle and the front bracket's front clip nut center is about 30.375 inches. With that confirmed, we can torque it to spec. Move down to the next bracket. So moving down here to our rearmost bracket, we're gonna be removing these 2 17mm bolts to mount our bracket. So we'll flash up a photo real quick of the Gen 2 bracket and its location. Add a little bit of Loctite. And for the rear, we're gonna take our bracket, have our arrow pointed forward. For the Gen 1, we're gonna use the same holes with the triangular cutout. For the Gen 2 in this rear position, we're gonna use the holes that have 1 single semicircle on one side. All right, and before torquing it down, we're gonna confirm that the center of this front clip nut is about 16.5 inches from the center of the middle bracket clip nut in the front. And there we go. So we can torque it down. All right, so I have our running board right now. You may notice that we already have our tread plate installed. You could do that before or after this step. Doesn't necessarily matter, but you're gonna use your 4mm Allen key and your 10mm socket on the back side. So we left these brackets loose underneath the vehicle. What I'm gonna do before torquing these down to spec is I'm gonna mount this board up partially so that when we're torquing these brackets to spec with those TP55 bolts, we're not gonna have the brackets rotate on us. So we can take 5 or so pieces of the carriage bolt hardware and use that to limit the rotation of these brackets. For installing this solo, I find that it's easiest to use your knees and to kind of hang the board like so. Make sure you have a nut on it before you hang that board, just to make sure that it doesn't drop and scratch the powder coat. And as a reminder, you're gonna wanna put the bracket in front of the running board tab. All right, so I have the 3 top ones loosely in. I'm gonna put 1 more in so that we can have our board kind of sitting a little more level. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my 9/16 wrench, hop on under there, and also at the same time, I'm gonna grab my TP55 and my torque wrench. So starting from the middle, I'm gonna tighten up some of these carriage bolts. These don't need to be tightened to a spec. They just need to be good and tight. All right, so now with the board mounted, it's gonna limit the rotation of these brackets when we torque down the TP55s. We can torque the TP55s to 80 foot-pounds. And now that our last one is torqued to spec, we're gonna be able to remove the carriage bolts and nuts and remove the board for the Aero panel install. And just like how we set it on, we can remove it the same way. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install our first Aero panel, or the TS panel A. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be using this factory T20 fasteners, this slot in the lung plate, and then also this bracket that we just installed, and then finally this OEM trim rail. So we have this C channel on our panel that's gonna grab onto the trim rail right here. Here we go. You can start with the T20 fasteners. You can keep these loose for now. Big thing we want to do in this stage is make sure that we are in the proper position forward and back. I think the best way to do it is you can try to line up the OEM factory lift point hole with this cutout, or you can use a jack puck. And just make sure that you're getting equal gap on all sides. That's centered for me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tighten these down. So we'll put this hardware in, a couple threads, insert our puck cover, and then move to panel B. All right, so now we're gonna take panel B and line it up with our slots. So the slots are gonna be in the positions of these running board brackets. You're gonna wanna make sure that you're clipped in on this rail. You can grab some hardware and just loosely thread it in. Now we can move over to panel C. All right, moving down here to panel C, we have to note a couple things for fitment. We wanna note this trim rail. We still have that C channel we're gonna grab onto. We're gonna note the position of this running board bracket. And then we're also gonna note the position of these tabs and slots. So we have the corresponding tabs on the rear of this panel. I've found to get all these in, it's easiest to kind of come at a little bit of an angle and slide everything on, just like that. And now we can go, grab our hardware and insert it a couple turns. All right, with this loose, we can go and hang our running board and then tighten all these down when we come back through. So I'm once again here installing this running board. This time we can't hang it vertically like we did before. We're gonna need to come more at a parallel angle to the ground. So you can still use the knee method, but a little bit more difficult. So now before tightening any of these down too tight, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to balance, make these two planes of the sheet metal tabs closer to parallel. Take the torque wrench and tighten these lower bolts to 35 foot-pounds. These top ones might be a little bit tougher to get. And if you can't get to the top bolts, what I like to do is I like to torque match. So I basically will feel how tight a certain bolt is and try to match the next bolt. And to finish this install up, we can tighten down our button head bolts. Start with the front panel. What we're also gonna do is try to match the amount of gap seen between panel A and B, and also with B and C. And then the finishing touch is going to be this jack plug plate. So we put the clip on the bottom of this plate and on the top of panel C. Essentially for installing it, you're going to remove it. You see you still have access to your lift point. For putting it back up, just hold it with one hand. Put that loosely into position. All right, it's good to go. And just like that, you now have installed your passenger side Aero panels and running boards. Complete the same steps on the driver's side to wrap up the install. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.